My name is Sean, and I'm delighted you're joining today's ESPC community webinar. Today I'm joined by Joe Griffin, MVP, who will cover Agent Glow Up, from simple agent to automation pro. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is at ESPC_community, and our hashtag is hashtag ESPC26. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, espc.com, and clicking Content tab at the top. Don't forget to join us for our next webinar, Copilot Agent Test Automation, from Prompt to Production with Confidence, with Stephen Bissier, MVP, and Thomas Giles, MVP. This will take place Tuesday, 12th of May at 2 p.m. CEST. To register for this webinar, go to www.sharepointeurope.com/learning hub. Join us at ESPC 26 this November in Amsterdam. The newly announced program features 120 plus sessions across 9 expert-led tracks covering Microsoft 365, Copilot, AI, Power Platform, security, governance, agents, and more, including real-world insights from Microsoft experts and MVPs. Super early bird tickets are now available until May 26th. Use code COPILOTWEEK for additional savings and book using the QR code. Early bird sale ends Friday the 15th of May. Secure a ticket to EPBC 26 today and expand your knowledge across Power Apps, Copilot Studio, Copilot, AI, Power Automate, security, and Dynamics. Use code COPILOTWEEK for extra savings and scan the QR code to book now. After the webinar, we'll have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the chat box. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you will be notified by email when it's available. And now I'm going to pass over to today's webinar presenter. Hello, Joe. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sean, for the introduction. Great. So welcome everyone to today's webinar. See, we've got a few people from Ireland and Denmark with us here today. That's always very good. So let me just start to share my screen over here, because me just talking wouldn't be that interesting. I'm sure you'll agree. So today we're talking about Copilot Studio agents. We're talking about how to go deeper with them, moving beyond kind of maybe our more simple based scenarios, simple retrieval based scenarios, to something a bit more interesting. And the way in which we kind of get towards that is using tools. There's lots of different tools that we can attach and leverage alongside our agents in order to be able to help us do some more kind of interesting things. Let me just make sure my do not disturb is on so that my colleagues aren't messaging me. There we go. And as well, it's going to allow us to move beyond those sort of more sort of basic scenarios and actually do something useful. We want these agents to actually connect to our systems. We want them to actually automate, entire end workflows for us. This is what we can start to do when it comes to the more advanced scenarios. So we'll kind of set the scene a bit, and then from there, jump into a demo, see all this kind of in action. As mentioned, towards the end, we'll have some time for sort of questions as well. So yeah, feel free to queue them up in the chat or anything like that. And we'll make sure you get your questions answered before the end of the session. So as mentioned already, my name is Joe Griffin. So I run the UK practice of ProMX. We're sort of a global partner involved in all things to do with Power Platform, Dynamics 365, and AI and all that sort of good stuff. Lots of lovely acronyms after my name. Guess that's how you know I'm important, perhaps. MVP, MCT, CSM, CEO. Yeah, bit of a mouthful over there. Yeah, and I always like to talk about anything to do with Copilot Studio, always like to talk about anything to do with the Power Platform, and always love to sort of support ESPC, the events and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully maybe you'll see me at a future event, either EPPC or ESPC. Give the QR code on the screen here, a bit of a scan with your mobile device. You'll find a link there to all of my various socials, LinkedIn, blog, and other stuff as well. So please do give that a scan. Please do connect with me after today's session. If you do have any questions at all, you want to sort of learn a bit more about all of this, then happy to answer those and yeah, help you get the most out of your Copilot Studio investments. So to set the scene, I'm hoping most of you or all of you on the call are already familiar with this, what Copilot Studio is. Think of this as really as being our easy way of getting started to create sort of agents. So rather than having to involve a developer, rather than having to, work with a whole bunch of different SDKs, write a bunch of C# or Python code. We can instead just create this using kind of a low code, no code kind of interface. And the great thing about Copilot Studio is that we can go from our initial conception in terms of the idea of the agent into something that's fully working and can then be deployed out in a few different sort of ways. So this is what makes the sort of solution quite sort of nice in terms of being able to get an agent onto a website, create a voice agent that we can then integrate within our contact center, and really start to accommodate some of the more advanced scenarios that we sort of see. So we're kind of here moving beyond kind of agent builder type scenarios where, okay, I'm maybe a subject matter expert. I connect up to maybe my SharePoint library and have a simple agent to ask some questions. Here, we're focusing a lot more on more sort of end-to-end sort of workflows, automations. We're focused on multi-agentic scenarios, multimodal type scenarios, and really preparing ourselves for the sort of the future state. By 2030, I think we're predicting somewhere close to 3 billion AI agents existing as part of all of this, an agent to handle every part of maybe perhaps our working sort of life and different sort of tasks and things like that. So we want to make sure that we have somewhere being able to manage all of that to deploy it quite sort of safely. And the really good thing as part of the Copilot Studio solution is that it fits really nicely alongside everything that we've done already, not only from a Power Platform standpoint, but also as well what we've maybe done from maybe a Purview standpoint, M365 standpoint, and all this good stuff. So if security and governance are kind of our main sort of focus areas, then with the solution, we can get to that point where we're sort of balancing those concerns quite sort of nicely. We can be nice and agile in terms of deploying out these agents with sort of ease, and we can fall back on a lot of really good functionality. If we already very well experienced with the Power Platform, then coming into this, we're going to find ourselves very easily able to sort of adapt and move forward from that. So all agents are kind of the same when it comes to capabilities. When we're focusing on a Copilot Studio standpoint, then the good thing is that a lot of the more complex aspects of this are handled for us. For example, we don't need to go and deploy out large language models from an Azure standpoint. We don't need to worry too much about creating the end user experience. Copilot Studio provides that kind of wrapper around all of that. We just kind of bring in our custom logic, we bring in any custom knowledge sources that we want, and the focus for today really is the tools that we can bring in to really extend and make our agents a bit more sort of effective. And each tool is kind of designed for different sort of scenarios. The slide here kind of just shows you all up in terms of what we have today in terms of all of the different sort of tools. Our focus really though is going to be on the 5 that we sort of see here. These are probably the ones that I would say you're going to be using the most. These are the ones that are going to be a bit more sort of interesting in terms of what you can sort of do and how we can sort of go and extend out further. But think at this point, as I mentioned, the agent's doing something practical, it's doing something useful kind of on our sort of behalf. So whether we're wanting to send out an email, whether we're wanting to maybe go and create some records in our database system, or perhaps maybe have our agent respond to things that are happening contextually. Maybe every morning it's going into and running off some sort of automation logic every time an email is being received. We can start to achieve these more kind of autonomous scenarios, agents acting on their own, solving various different business problems for us. So what do we have here in a bit more detail? So first, we've got agent flows. Now, some of the more eagle-eyed of you here today will notice that this looks kind of pretty identical to what we have from a Cloudflare standpoint. And this is all it is. It's kind of just, Microsoft, obviously being Microsoft, rebranding and rechanging things slightly. The core sort of experience when it comes to building out these kind of automations, these agent flows, is very similar to Cloudflows. But there is some additional discrete functionality that agent flows kind of offers us. This mainly targets things like, for example, multi-stage approvals. So again, maybe some of you on the call are kind of familiar when it comes to how to build modern approvals in Flow to send out to teams. With agent flows, we can kind of go a step further and we can actually have more complex approval flows where maybe the agent takes some action, approve or reject on our sort of behalf. And as well, we have the ability to sort of tap into things like custom prompts, be able to have these flows run a bit sort of faster and things like that. So very much now sort of designed for being more compatible with our agents. But when we're talking about agent flows, what we're talking about here is having this deterministic control over automation, where for our particular process, we always need to ensure that step A follows step B, step C, and that we have consistency of responses on it over here. Because with some of the non-deterministic stuff, some of the Gen AI stuff, it's pretty nice, but sometimes that unpredictability might not be suited to our particular process. So with agent flows, we can kind of get around this and make sure that we are ultimately, having that sort of predictability around all of this. Next, we've got our connectors. So again, this is the benefit that the Copilot Studio solution gives us in terms of allowing us to leverage all of those really good Power Platform investments. So pretty much, straight away, Copilot Studio was able to go right bang. All of these 1,400 plus connectors that we have in the Power Platform are now kind of fair game here. And we can sort of connect and use these in much the same way as if we were in a Cloudflow. So we can have, for example, an action to go and create a record in Dataverse. We can have an action to go and maybe, get some messages from a team site. All of this stuff can be added to the agent. And then based on how the user sort of asks questions, it can sort of go, okay, we think you're going to need this particular tool over here. Let's go and perhaps maybe send an email. Let's go and perhaps create this record, do what you need to do as part of all of this. So this really means that we can get a lot more investment out of this. If we're building our own custom connectors, we know that they're not only going to be able to work nicely in Power Apps and Power Automate, but also as well in Copilot Studio. So again, meaning we can get additional mileage out of all of this. Next, we've got MCP, Model Context Protocol. This should be kind of, top of your mind. If you're not familiar with MCP, certainly this is something that you need to get a bit more sort of hands-on with. I was kind of in a similar boat to you last year, trying to, okay, what's this MCP stuff that people keep talking about? Is it important or not? So a great resource that you can turn to if you search for Daniel Laskowitz and from the developer advocacy team at Microsoft. He's got a great sort of lab there that sort of will take you through, okay, how to work with how to configure MCP for the first time. And after that, kind of things just sort of clicked for me. I was like, okay, now I understand what this is. Think of this really in simple terms as providing a way for our AI agents to know everything about our business system. So rather than in the previous approach, having to go in and say, okay, well, for Dataverse, I want to add in a tool to create a record. I want to add in a tool to retrieve records, to update records, blah, 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 having to do 10, 15 different, click, 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 to be able to add on all of our tools. With MCP, what we can instead just have, okay, here is an endpoint that describes everything that my business system can do. And then the agent is then able to sort of kind of talk to that and kind of then figure out, okay, which specific action or actions am I going to need to be able to achieve this particular sort of task. So the benefit here is that we can simplify things. If, for example, we are changing what tools our solution exposes out, all we need to do in this scenario is just update our MCP server definition, then that will cascade out accordingly. And it means that, we can just be a bit more simplified when it comes to how we manage all of this. And we'll kind of see in the demo shortly in terms of how that comes together and why, for certain scenarios, MCP will be good. But this is something that Microsoft is investing very heavily in. We're seeing MCP servers come up for all of the different key Microsoft solutions. Certainly, if you're wanting to get more agentic in your approach, you've got your own internal APIs and systems that you want to make it easy for agents to interact with, then having some form of MCP server involved is going to be pretty essential, I would say. Next, we've got our prompts. So prompts are really targeted for a few different scenarios. One where we need to have some very discrete processing for maybe a task or a function. Maybe we need to go and generate some custom code, maybe a graph. We need the ability to be able to have things like dynamic inputs that are sent and received as part of this. Prompts as well also will be compatible across our different Power Platform services. So if we foresee a need to reuse it, maybe in a Cloudflow or maybe in our Canvas app, then again, this gives us the ability to sort of do that. The third and maybe the more interesting scenario is that with prompts, we have the ability of being able to override the underlying large language model over here. And potentially, if we're working with models that have been created in Microsoft Foundry, we can potentially bring these into the equation on here. Because what we're finding these days is that no two large language models are kind of the same. Different models will be best for different sort of use cases. Different models will be maybe cheaper, more optimized for what we're trying to sort of achieve. So in this scenario, it's going to be better for us just to kind of, select the most appropriate model to get the better response that we want. Maybe, for example, we've got our own custom model that maybe we fine-tuned with data within our own organization. Using this, we can then factor it in as part of our prompts and get a much more better response out of it. And then last but not least, computer use agent. This was announced at Ignite last year. This is kind of like maybe the natural evolution of our robotic process automation, or RPA flows, that some of you may have played about with within Power Automate Desktop in the past. So think of this as basically like a machine that's sitting behind the scenes. We give it some broad instructions. Okay, go to this system, do this, do this, do this, do this. What the agent is then able to then go and do is then spin up a desktop environment, and then effectively for each screen, take a picture, then go, right, okay, what's the next step I need to do from here? Oh, okay, I need to click this button over here. Oh, I need to go and put this data in over here. Oh, I get an error message over here. Let me see if I can work around this. So this is potentially going to be quite useful if we've got those systems that maybe change very frequently. If maybe, for example, it's like Copilot Studio, every time you go into it, you see the interfaces maybe change ever so slightly. Then the good thing about computer use agents is that they can kind of work around that. For those of you who are familiar building out Power Automate Desktop flows in the past, if a single change was to happen to the system, that automation would be quite sort of brittle and would fall over straight away in error. With computer use agents, it can kind of, figure out, wow, I've got an error. What do I need to do here to try and get around this and to kind of move forward? So at the moment, the computer use agent functionality is kind of in preview currently, but it is going to be, I think, going to eventually replace what we've sort of seen from a Power Automate Desktop standpoint. And it's well worth checking out at this current sort of point, just to see, what the future roadmap and future direction of travel will be. So I appreciate here throwing a lot of stuff at you at the sort of wall. So, okay, well, how do I actually figure out what's going to be the best tool over here? So I've tried to break it down here on the slide, but in very sort of simple terms, agent flows is going to be for those deterministic scenarios where we've got complex multi-step business processes that we need to have fine-tuned control over. Computer use are going to be best for those sort of legacy or UI only systems. Prompts when we need to have maybe that lightweight reasoning. Maybe we need to do some summarization or some content generation. MCP is going to be best when we've got maybe multiple different sort of tools that we want to integrate and have that rich context around all of this. And then last but not least, our sort of connectors. Okay, maybe we've just got a single action existing custom connector that we want to reuse around over this, and we want to get into the Copilot Studio sort of realm. So this will hopefully help you kind of help you decide, okay, which tool is going to be best. These are, I think, going to be the most common ones that you're going to be working with. But it's all well and good talking about this. Let's actually jump in, actually see how it all sort of comes together. So I'm going to jump into a demonstration. I'm going to bring this browser screen over here. So naturally, we start off first of all within Copilot Studio. It would be a pretty rubbish demo if we didn't. And we're going to go and create ourselves a new agent. So I'm going to go over here to agents over here. I've got my environment already set up, ready to go as part of this. And as we said, and then we'll just go into here and just create our agent. So I'm going to call this our agent glow up, ESPC webinar. So the good thing here is they've made some changes to this interface now, so we can specify the name on creation. And as well, we can see down here, we can select the solution that we want to put it into. So I should already have down here a solution for Agent Globe that we can sort of use. So it means that things get routed to the correct location. We can make sure we do nice application lifecycle management, all of that sort of good stuff. So let's go and create this agent now. Should take just a few minutes to get that created. Certainly enough time for me just to have a quick sip of my cup of tea. It's mid-morning, you got to drink tea, naturally. And we can see that the agent then starts to scaffold up around all of this. It kind of sort of gets created and then just sort of thinks about it before finally creating it. There will be a few things that we just kind of need to do on this sort of screen in order to just to make sure that things are configured correctly. So crucially, and first of all, if we go into settings at the top, we need to just first of all make sure that we have got the content moderation setting set to low down here. So by default, this is set to always set to low. If you wanted to make sure that your agent isn't responding to things that could be harmful or dangerous, then you can go freely adjust that to high. This scenario over here, we just want to make sure it's currently set to low. And in terms of the model down here, I've currently got the new Anthropic models enabled on my tenants, so it kind of just forces me to sort of use that. But in this case, I'm just going to use GPT-5 chat. It should be fine for what we're going to be demoing over here. As always, experiment and just find what's going to be the best model for you based on your particular scenario. Okay, so we've gone and created the agent down here. We now have the ability to go and sort of do some stuff into it. So the first and most important thing we need to configure is the instructions, where we're telling the agent what it needs to do. And this is going to be important for a few things as we see a bit later on. So I'm going to go to edit down here, and then just going to paste in my instruction set down here. So very simple instructions. Okay, you are Agent Globe. You're going to basically help us demonstrate how to use tools. And in this case, we're going to be talking about the weather. I'm from the UK, from the British Isles. We're obsessed with the weather over there. So yeah, this is going to be what we talk about today. The key thing I want to just draw your attention towards is this particular instruction down here, where we're just, okay, asking for some additional context around each sort of responses. So if you're wanting the agent to always do things in a certain way, then the instructions, what you tell it to do and what you crucially tell it not to do is always kind of going to be important there. Whoopsie daisy, let me just put that back there. So always make sure you sort of spend some time and attention sort of just looking towards that. So at this point, I'm going to save the agent down here. I'm also as well going to disable web search because we wanted to use tooling rather than just doing a generic web search. And at this point, if I now go and give this agent a test, I'm just going to start a new test session over here. If I ask it, okay, what's the weather forecast today? It's going to come back with a pretty generic response. Something that's not really too sort of useful because it doesn't have anything else here that we can sort of use. Oh, I've just realized I'm on the wrong screen over here. Let me just make sure that we're over there. Okay, yeah, so we're down here. So yeah, we disable work IQ. So we just need to make sure that is, so what's the weather today? I'll just say in London, United Kingdom. It should come back with a generic response. It's not really too useful to anyone as part of this. It's going to fall back on sort of its knowledge sources. It can, and at this point, it's kind of looking back at its default knowledge. It sort of goes, okay, well, based on my training data, I kind of know, okay, the weather is currently maybe around this, but it's messed up some things here. It thinks that we're in early December. It's given me a useful fact about London as well, but really not too useful. So at this point, we need to go and add in a tool that's going to hopefully return something a bit more useful as part of this sort of response. So let's look at, first of all, our agent flows. I'm going to look at agent flows first, particularly, and before we look at the connector flows, because I want you to kind of just see what the process looks like and why for certain scenarios going down the connector route is going to be faster and easier. So rather handily and conveniently, Microsoft have an entire tool section up here that we have for our particular sort of agent. And from here, I can just go and add on a tool. We can see we've got a whole bunch of different sort of tool types that we can add into the agent. In this case, we're going to add in a new agent flow simply by selecting add new workflow over here. And straight away, it's going to take us through into the agent flow sort of designer, which, as I mentioned, should look pretty familiar in terms of if you've built any cloud flows before. It creates for us a trigger where we go and where we can go and call the flow, and then a final action step, which must always exist, where it responds back to the agent. So the idea is that we feed some data, it does something within the logic as part of this, and then we can feed something back out instead. So in this case, we're going to sort of just create an agent flow that's going to leverage one of the connectors that we have as part of this. So down here, I'm just going to go down here. I'm going to go to, okay, we're going to first of all accept the city. So we'll give it a description here, city for the weather forecast. And then also as well, the country region. So these are the two essential details that we need in order to be able to get the weather forecast. So again, we'll just give it a description just so it's nice and decorative. And also as well, descriptions here are useful as well for the agent because it will often fall back on descriptions to be able to figure out, okay, what does something sort of do here? So very important to always sort of consider that. From here, we can then go and make our agent flow as simple or as complex as we kind of want. In this case, for the purpose of this demo, we're just going to go and add in the MSN weather connector. And we should have an action on here, which I'm sure you've maybe seen before, where we can just go and get the weather forecast for today. So here we then need to feed in our dynamic properties in order to be able to populate this. So again, a few manual steps that's needed here to sort of do all of that. Then at the back end of it, we can then feed out our outputs. So again, the MSN here, we need to define this sort of manually. And as well, there's lots of different outputs that we get with this particular action. So in this case, if we wanted to have all 48 of them, we need to feed all of those back individually. For the purposes of now, we're just going to go and get the day's summary as the only value to feedback. And we'll see in a few moments why, okay, maybe the connector option might be a bit nicer in terms of returning data back. But we've kind of defined our flow here. Very simple flow. It's not going to win any awards anytime sort of soon. But hopefully we'll demonstrate, what we can do over here. The final thing I'm just going to do is just make sure I give this a name. So I'm just going to call this my get weather forecast. So it's nice and descriptive for me. Give us another save at the top up here, and then publish this out. And then now what we can then do is then see how this tool then gets added to the agent, which will kind of do for us automatically, and will also very helpfully as well take us straight back into the agent, so we can go and configure that further. Which helps. We want to make sure that we're not getting distracted. We want to reduce the amount of clicks, the risk of carpal tunnel syndrome, all that sort of good stuff. So yeah, Microsoft is very much looking out for us here, I think. Okay, so it's ready to go. So let's go back to the agent, and it should then reload the screen over here with our new sort of tool added in. There's just a few things that we need to do from a configuration standpoint in the tool to make sure it's going to be optimal for us to kind of use it. And we'll sort of talk through exactly what we're going to be doing once this thing gets added in. So there's the tool over there. I can now just go and click into it over here like so. So as mentioned before, descriptions are always really useful, because this is what the agent will look at in order to be able to figure out, okay, is this a tool that I can use to meet the user request? So in this case, I'm going to give it a much more descriptive description. I'm just going to call it over here, okay, get to the current weather forecast for a city in a country or region, to make that nice and clear. We can see it's figured out the inputs and outputs that we want as part of all of this. What we can also do to help this is to align this to an entity behind the scenes. So we know, for example, okay, we want to feed in a city. So we can instruct the agent to interpret the response. Okay, if it sees, for example, London, Dublin, Edinburgh, Glasgow, whatever the city name is then able to identify and extract that out and fill that in correctly. And also as well, maybe if you were to do abbreviations, so rather than United Kingdom, you were to do perhaps maybe UK, again, it can figure out what the correct thing is to map to here, simply just by specifying the entity down there. So we've done that for both of those different inputs. Then the final thing I just need to do down here is to set the option here, write the response with generative AI, so that it comes back with a useful response from there. There, at this point, I can just click on save, and we can proceed to kind of test this tool before we kind of move on. So I'm going to start a new test session. I always make sure I do this whenever I make some changes, just to make sure latest configuration sort of comes out here. So I'm just going to ask it a question now. Okay, so tell me the weather forecast in Manchester, United Kingdom today. So straight away, it should recognize, okay, we're talking about forecasts. Okay, I've got a tool there that I can sort of use. We can see it's gone and automatically filled in the required inputs. When we're testing, we always need to do as a one-time action, just go into the connection manager and establish the connection. It's kind of just a slightly annoying one-time thing that we need to do. But once it's done, we can then sort of proceed forward from there. We don't need to worry about it again. So I'll just go and click on submit there. Make sure that goes kind of green over there, and then we can then proceed to kind of test that further. Okay, so I'll close that down over there, click on retry, and now it should go and run the automation for me. Okay, so we see we get back our weather forecast. So scattered light rain showers with a high of 56. Okay, yeah, raining in Manchester, surprise, surprise. Also as well, it's gone and honoured our sort of nice little request there to give us a fun fact. So yeah, we can see it's working. It's be able to get that single output out from there and return a useful answer back to there. So pretty useful, but what if we wanted to have more that come back from there? What if we wanted to find out, okay, what the current moon cycle is, what the highest temperature will be, the lowest temperature will be? There was 48 different dynamic outputs there with that connector action that we could have potentially leveraged, which would have required us to manually add in each sort of time. So potentially, this is not going to be the most expedient route for us to go and use this connector. Instead, we can just perhaps maybe consider adding in the connector action directly. So let's go and do that now and compare the kind of experience there. So to prevent any potential problems, I'm just going to first of all disable the get weather forecast tool, so we don't have any conflicts there. And we'll go and proceed to add in the very same connector action that we worked with a few moments ago directly into the tool. All I need to do is just up here, search for MSN weather. It should then go and find the appropriate action down there, the very same forecast that we had from before. So get forecast for today. We go and just make sure we configure the connection, go and add and configure. So again, there's some configuration that we can potentially do with the tool itself, things like description and other useful details, just to make sure the agent knows how to kind of use it. In this case, it's going to automatically grab the connection, the description that it had from the action itself. So with that there, it should be sufficient. And we can see down there the different inputs and completion down here. What's useful is that we can potentially have the AI automatically ask or determine the correct information if maybe the user's not supplying it, or we can go and maybe hard code it. So in this case, maybe I don't want to actually ask the user each time to go and actually specify the units of measurement. In this case, what I can do is just always set it to, for example, imperial measurements. And then that way we can make the conversation a lot nicer, a lot easier there. So now I'm going to save this and we're going to test this tool again. I'm going to ask it a slightly different question. I'm just going to ask it for, okay, what's the weather forecast today and what's the current moon phase? So asking two discrete pieces of information, but specifically here, I'm not actually giving the information about the location. That's the key thing here. So send that message there. It should hopefully go and identify, okay, there's the tool that we want as part of this. It's gone and done a default location based on browser sort of settings. So potentially that's something that it can kind of default back onto potentially to help with that. It will also as well potentially look at other aspects of the conversation to help us with that. Again, we just need to go through this process here to be able to go and authenticate the connection. Then we go and retry this down over here. We see all those different outputs are going to be fed back out. It goes and feeds me the information that we need down there. And I get not only much more information around the forecast, I get the current moon phase as well as also sunrise and sunset. Every single one of those outputs is automatically added in and is made available to me. So it means that, okay, what took us, let's say, 5-10 minutes before to create the agent flow, we were able to do in half the time simply by using connect to action. This is why I quite like them in particular in terms of being able to offer that potential and to make it very easy to be able to build these automations. As well, what's also quite good is that we can start to mix and match these connect to actions as part of a single request. So for example, what if I wanted to take the forecast that I've generated and maybe go and insert it into Dataverse as an example? All I need to do is just go into here and add in the additional tool to help me do that. Because I know I've got Dataverse as a connector that I can use. I know that Dataverse supports the ability to go and create records into a particular sort of system. So all I need to do is just go and add in the Dataverse, add a record action, and I can go and accommodate that kind of scenario over here. So what I will need to do over here is just go and again add and configure this tool in. There'll be some configurations I need to do here just to make sure the tool kind of works as intended. So crucially, I need to tell the tool, okay, which environment do I want to go and create the records into? So rather than having the user specify that each time. So in this case, I can just go down to the drop down here and I can go and select, for example, Copilot demos. Also as well, we can have the table name and row item, which the AI can kind of just figure out itself, or we can give some hints towards. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to again update the description and give it some broad hints here in terms of, okay, what tables does it need to look at. So here I'm telling it specifically, okay, the name of the table, the logical name of the table, and as well, which column value to sort of use. I found that sometimes with the Dataverse action, giving this additional helping hand will make sure that things kind of route to the correct location. So with this tool created, I can go and click on save. And then what we can then do is then go and ask another question back here and ask it to not only get me the forecast, but to go and create this in Dataverse for me. So we're going to pick on another UK city now. We'll pick on Birmingham down here. So I'm going to ask for the forecast for Birmingham and then going to ask it to go and create this in Dataverse for me. So after a few seconds, it should go and recognize this. It should recognize, okay, I've got two different tools I can use here. The first to go and get the weather forecast, and the second one to go and create that in Dataverse. Again, I just need to allow that as a first time sort of step there to ensure it goes and creates that in the environment. And after a few moments, we should get a confirmation back that, yeah, it's gone and created that in the environment in question. And will then also return me some information again about the outlook and all that sort of stuff there. And just to prove that this isn't smoke and mirrors, if I jump across into my other browser tab over here, might just need to sign in again very quickly, go to weather forecasts over here. This is just a very beautiful app that took me many hours to create over a long sort of weekend. I'm sure you can appreciate that. And if we go and just filter this down here, newest to oldest, we should see, okay, yep, there we go. There's the forecast that was created just a few moments ago. So the tool is kind of working as we sort of expect. So this is what I quite like about these tools. We can start to unlock some more complex scenarios, and it can be very aware of what the user's asking for. Kind of do things in kind of one fell swoop, figure out the best mix and match of different sort of tools to use to accommodate the scenario. But as you'd probably expect over time, if we're adding a lot of tools into here, things can start to get a bit more sort of complicated. What if, for example, we wanted to, have support for more sort of advanced sort of actions? We wanted to be able to have it so it can do some different sort of things for us. Not only be able to create records, but also delete records, rather than having to add in all of the various different connector actions specifically. This is going to be a scenario where I can go and use MCP instead. So let's go and jump into that now. So again, I'm just going to disable the Dataverse action here, just to prevent anything from duplicating or causing some problems here. And we then want to proceed to go and add in the MCP server for Dataverse. Now, when we go and do this, there's a few things just to keep in mind as part of this. The first is there's a few different options down here. There's a Dataverse MCP server, there's a Dataverse MCP preview tools, and there's also one that's deprecated down there. So probably best scenario will be to make sure you always use this one over here, unless you want to experiment with the tools themselves. There's also dependency here to ensure that the MCP server is enabled for the Dataverse environment in question. So this is where we need to jump into our Power Platform Admin Center, and we just need to go and just double check this is enabled. By default, this should be, unless your tenant admin has kind of gone in there and disabled it specifically. Just to show you so you can go and check yourself, if you go down to Manage down here, we want to find our Copilot Demos environment from the list down here. And then where we need to go is into the settings at the top up here. We then just want to go and select under features down here, the list of options. Then if we scroll down towards the left, we should see there's going to be some options down here for Dataverse Model Context Protocol. Just make sure that the appropriate MCP server is enabled, whether it's the Geo or the preview version. Once that's enabled, you'll be able to start working with that within Copilot Studio, or indeed anywhere else that you wanted to use MCP for. So everything should be good there. So I'm going to go and add that into there. The Dataverse MCP server exposes out a lot of different discrete tools there. So we can handle, for example, our full, create, read, update sort of scenarios. But potentially as well, that also adds in some actions which might not be too desirable. For example, do we want to have an agent that can go and just freely delete records in our production system simply because a user asked to sort of do that? This is why it's always important to go into the MCP server configuration and kind of just review the list of tools that are available down here. So in this case, I'm just going to go and only allow specific tools that I want as part of this. So in this case, I'm just going to allow the list tables and describe tables, and then only allow it to create tables down here. So I can just go and turn off the tools that I don't want as part of this to kind of help me along here. Again, sometimes I've found with the description, it's useful to kind of give it some additional context to kind of just ensure that things kind of work as expected if you're finding you're not quite getting what you need there. So I'm just going to paste in the same description that we have over there like so. Aside from that, we have everything configured that we need to over here. It's going to automatically connect to the current environment that I'm in. So I don't need to go and specify any of that. So at this point, I can just go and hit on save, and we can kind of repeat the same kind of demo over here as before, and sort of just go and see how this kind of works. So in this case, let's maybe see how it is in Ireland today. So please, can you get me the forecast for Waterford, Ireland, and then create this in Dataverse for me. This time it should be, again, go and use our weather forecast collector. We can see it's detected that, okay, we need to use the MCP server here to go and do this. So it now should proceed to sort of work through, first of all, get the weather forecast that we need, and then go and then proceed to then create that in Dataverse using the very same MCP sort of connector as part of that. So after a few moments, it recognizes, okay, the information it needs, it knows the table that we need, the inputs that we need to go and specify as part of all of that. And after a few moments, hopefully, unless this demo completely fails on me, we should see it's gone and created that within the Dataverse environment. I've had a bit of bad luck with this demo in more sort of recent times, but hopefully I did test it yesterday, it did kind of work. So maybe the demo gods are going to be kind to me today, who knows? I'll just take a sip of my cup of tea while you watch the sweat beads sort of dripping down my head here. And I may have actually just realized that it's gone and actually used the wrong tool here. It's gone and done create table rather than create record. So actually, we've got maybe a slightly different demo. We've got a demo that shows us actually creating us a table instead. In fact, we might be able to go into Dataverse and actually see how that sort of looks. So yeah, I think I selected the wrong sort of tool here. It should have gone and created the record instead. Let me just see if I can maybe salvage this quickly. We want to go and do create record, not create table. Yeah. So user problem. AI agents are perfect. It's the humans that program them who are always a bit sort of stupid, unfortunately. And I include myself in that category. Let's test this again, and hopefully we have a successful demo. Let's see. So yeah, the MCP connector does expose that the ability to go and work with metadata in the Dataverse environment, which could be useful for certain scenarios. So here now it's gone and it's listed out all the tables that it needs. It's found the correct weather forecast table. And yeah, we've got a working demo. See, we can salvage these things in real time. This is what's really good. So if we now jump back into our weather forecast app, we should see we've got a nice little forecast for Waterford in there that's gone and created. So a bit cloudy down there again, 11% chance of rain. Yes, it should be nice to have a walk down the canals there, at least for a little bit down there. So that's all really good there. So I like MCP servers because they allow for this more complex scenario here. It's gone and figured out, okay, I need to go and create a record. It's able to go and list out all the metadata so it knows exactly the name of the table. So in this case, it's gone and found the weather forecast table. So it offers the ability to sort of combine together for lots of useful interrelated sort of Dataverse components into a single sort of, action, single sort of call, which is quite sort of nice. Okay, next demo then, custom sort of prompts. So for this, what we want to do is go back to tools. And we're going to create a custom prompt that's going to replicate some of the functionality that we've already got within the custom instructions. So instead of having in our description an instruction that kind of says, okay, go and give me a fun fact about a city, I'm instead going to create a prompt that handles that for me. So here, the prompt is just going to be something very simple. It's going to be generate a fun, an interesting fact about the location. So the good thing about prompts is that we can feed in inputs. So in this case, I can have a text input for my location. And in this case, I'm just going to maybe do location down here. I'll maybe just do perhaps, for example, as an example, Belfast over here. And also as well, when we're building these prompts, it's very quick and easy for us to go and test things out. So I can just go and validate straight away, okay, is this tool kind of working as I sort of expect? So yeah, as expected, yeah, Titanic, big topic there always with Belfast. So we get a nice little fun fact there about the Holland and Wolff shipyard, I think it is. If that's my history knowledge is kind of failing me there. So yeah, that's where it was all built over there. Other things to note with our custom prompts, the ability to customize the model with the ability to bring in those Microsoft Foundry models as well. So that's quite nice as part of all of this. And the ability here to do things like, for example, work with image or documents, PowerFX formulas, and other details here. So really for those more specialized scenarios, it's going to be a lot better for us. So I'm just going to give this a name. I'm going to save it down here like so. I'll be naughty. I'll just give it an underscore there to make sure it's going to be unique. I think I've already created this already as part of a different demo. Forgot to delete it. Okay, so add and configure the tool down here. And then just a final thing again to do over here, I just need to update the description so it knows, okay, whenever I ask about the weather forecast, it needs to go and call this custom prompt as well to go and get me that nice sort of fun fact about the city. So here, I just need to go into here and just update the description here like so. So that, okay, we include that whenever a user asks for a weather forecast. The rest of it there should be fine as part of this. And just to confirm this works as I kind of expect, I'm going to go back to my instructions and system prompt and remove the sentence there where it says, okay, give me a fun fact about the locations, because you want to just validate that the tool kind of works as expected here. Okay, so now that's all kind of sort of working over here. So now we can sort of give this a test again. So who haven't we been kind to yet in terms of location? We've not talked about Wales yet. So let's get the forecast for weather. So in this case, please get me the weather forecast for Cardiff, Wales. Unfortunately, Scotland will not get any attention today. I'm sure they're delighted to hear about that. So again, it should go and recognize the correct sort of tools to use. It's going to get the weather forecast sort of tool there. It then goes and detects, okay, there's my sort of custom prompt. It's going to run through that, get the fun fact, then return me back that nice sort of response there. So Cardiff is home to the world's oldest record store, Spinners Records, since 1894. Even I didn't know that. So yeah, we're learning lots here today, not just about Copilot Studio, but about all the cities within the sort of the British Isles. That's quite nice. So think custom prompts, think more specialized scenarios, more specialized sort of needs as part of that. And again, gives us a high amount of control there in terms of being able to run that, being able to control things like the back end sort of model, and crucially the data that we want to feed in as well. That's always going to be very sort of important. So final thing that I've got time, hopefully, to show you quickly is compute use agents. So for here, I've kind of got a pre-canned scenario because otherwise, if we were to do this sort of live, it's kind of just a case of just waiting and watching things to be running in the sort of background. So if I go back to my pre-built agent over here, under tools on here, we should see that we've got here's one I made earlier in true Blue Beta fashion, for those of you from the UK who recognize that reference. So we can see down here, we've got a tool. And the tool just basically, we give it some broad instructions. Okay, based on an input, go and find out the weather forecast, and then go onto TripAdvisor and then find me a nice thing to do based on the weather. And then from there, go back and summarize that and go forward from there. So ideally, you want to be as sort of as specific as possible with our instructions as part of this. We can then go and run this compute use agent on either a hosted machine or crucially a machine that we host ourselves. So this allows us then to bring in maybe any line of business applications that we're sort of using, or apps that we want to be able to have the automation built upon. And as well, we can also add in things like human supervision, credentials, if we need to sign into different sort of places and all that sort of stuff. So this is kind of just a simple scenario, but in terms of what you could potentially do with this, I think is going to be quite sort of significant. So in terms of then how this then executes, if I now go to activity, again, here's one I kind of made a little bit sort of earlier here. So go down to here, we can sort of just see how this will then run in context. So what's going to happen is the user will ask a question. It will then go and spin up the environment, the machine itself. So this is where I was sort of asking for some things in Vienna. What it will then do is then it will go through each sort of step of the process. We see it then basically just goes and has a desktop there. What the compute use agent is doing at each step is it's then going, okay, here's the screen. I'm going to do kind of like an OCR recognition on this, and then going to figure out what's the next step. Okay, well, the user's asked me to get the weather forecast. So the next step needs to be, okay, I want to go into a web browser and go get that forecast information. Okay, the user's then asked for information about what's happening in a particular location. So I'm now going to go onto TripAdvisor over here. And then step by step, it's then going to figure out, okay, what do I need to do next? So in this case, then goes and figures out, okay, well, the user's asking about Vienna. Let's go put it into the search box and then press the search button. And it's kind of figuring all this out automatically. It's doing this on itself. All I've just given it is a broad outline instruction. And it's able to go and do that. And then by the end of it, it then goes and recommends me, okay, based on the weather forecast, okay, maybe you want to go to the art museum over there. Apparently, it's the dopest art museum in Europe. Not my words, the words of my agent. So that's pretty good to sort of see there. So a simple scenario, but it kind of illustrates, what we can potentially do here. And I think when this moves out into GA, we'll start to see a lot of the old kind of legacy RPA flows move gradually into this sort of realm over here, because it means that we can be a bit more flexible. We can have more less brittle automations. And we can account for those scenarios where, okay, web interfaces, applications are constantly moving, constantly evolving, without us needing to go and having to update an automation kind of each time as part of all of that. So that really, I think is going to be quite sort of important and useful over time there. Speaking of time, I am supremely conscious of time. I can also see we've got a few questions in the chat itself. So before we do, I just want to wrap up with a few closing thoughts myself, things to kind of go away and think about when you're approaching this yourself. So it's a big decision at the moment when it comes to agent development. Okay, do we want to be going down the deterministic or non-deterministic route? Determinism gives us control, means that we can make sure things happen the way we sort of expect, but typically require a bit more effort on our behalf when we're building out the automation. With non-deterministic, okay, less effort required sort of upfront, but the unpredictability of what we get from an output standpoint might not be something that business sort of tolerates. what I'm tending to find at the moment is that the right blend of both deterministic and non-deterministic is really achieving the best outcomes over here. So try and rely on the correct tool for the correct scenario. If you're doing something important like reviewing or approving a loan application, or something that's going to maybe impact somebody in a significant sort of way, then perhaps having a more deterministic automation there is going to be better as part of that. With what's happening as well, don't underestimate, now is probably better than ever to actually go deeper into Power Platform capabilities, because as we saw today, they're very much being used quite significantly as part of this. You're not going to be disadvantaged too much by doing this. Also appreciate that things are moving very, very fast. What's new today is going to be different sort of tomorrow. So hopefully this webinar has kind of done its purpose in terms of bringing you up to speed, with things like MCP servers, which, if you did not hear about before today, I'd certainly go and advise you to go and have a look in terms of how you can implement that in your own organization. And going back to my earlier point, consider which large language model is going to be best. ChatGPT, OpenAI models are great for certain scenarios, but it might be maybe a Claude model, it might be maybe DeepSeek, Hugging Face, Grok, whatever. There could be any other different models that could be useful for your scenarios. And this is where prompts in particular become quite sort of useful in helping you to sort of take advantage of that and to address a very particular scenario that you sort of need as part of this. Okay, so yeah, I can see we've already got some questions here in the kind of chat.
So thanks, Joe, for the great presentation and demo. So now we're getting the questions and answers part. Should you wish to ask a question, please feel free to type in the chat box now. So the first question is, I think this was a good while ago. Can you quickly glance over tool parameter validation and model steering in case of validation failure? Same for final output validation. In pedantic AI, one can carefully feed suggests back into the model if it uses a tool in the wrong way despite argument descriptions. Example, this is not a city, this is a country, try again.
Yeah, great question there. So this is where we come into our sort of evaluations over here, where we can sort of build out these different sort of test sets. So we can go and create some different sort of questions over here. We can even manually generate these questions, or alternatively here, I can go and generate a test set of questions. And the key thing here is we can then sort of evaluate and make sure, okay, are we getting the expected response as part of all of this? And making sure that, yeah, as we're refining and changing this, ultimately the agent is, meeting our sort of needs as part of that. So I would certainly advise you to look at the evaluations feature there.
Perfect. And the next question is, when adding the Dataverse record, will it use the user's credits to create the record?
Yeah, so in this case, it would have created the record as my sort of user over here. So we can see I'm the owner of this record because I was the one that sort of signed in. So it's always going to use that context of the user that you sign in with. So if you're deploying this out, you'll probably need to identify, for example, like a service account that you use that will then sort of do those actions, on that behalf. So.
Perfect. The next question there is, what's the recommended maximum number of tools we can enable for an agent?
I suspect there will be probably some hard limit somewhere, probably something like maybe 1028 or some other random number that probably makes sense to all the computer science people in the sort of room, perhaps. What I would advise is, keep it simple, stupid. Don't be overloading the agent with too many sort of tools, particularly as well if they're doing similar kind of things, because the agent's going to start to get a bit sort of confused. It will maybe duplicate and do things wrong, and ultimately it's just going to lead to a more frustrating end user experience. So try and just simplify things, and really as well use MCP to help you as part of that process.
Perfect. The next question is, can you paste the agent skills as custom prompts? Or what would be the right place to paste agent skills into a Copilot Studio agent?
I would say use prompts for that. As far as I know at the moment, there isn't any support yet for agent skills, given what's happening at the moment with Dataverse skills on the platform level, and as well what we're seeing with Claude skills. I imagine that could be a scenario they lock at the moment. But for now, I'd probably advise, just stick to custom prompts for now.
Perfect. The next question is, audit trails for agent actions were already asked about, yet it is also possible to centrally audit /agent prompts created in by tenant users for compliance legal hour.
Yeah, so this will be when we're looking at the Power Platform Admin Center capabilities. things like, for example, manage environments and enabling things like auditing there, because then you'll be able to start to see what's happening there as part of all of this. As well, things from the Purview and also Agent 365 things side of things. Now that's sort of out as well. That's going to be where you would sort of go and have that bubbled up, from a tenant admin standpoint.
Perfect. And the next question is a custom prompt equivalent to a trigger word? If not, how can a custom prompt be used to explicitly invoke a special tool? And how should conflicting trigger words be handled?
So the custom prompt will always be triggered based on, so if we go back to the one that we had over here, it's going to be based on how we define the description over here. So based on the description, based on its name, the AI agent is going to kind of figure out, okay, is this the correct tool for me to use based on what the user's asking for as part of this? So really making sure that you've nailed down your names and descriptions for each tool is going to make sure that you always invoke a specific tool, and crucially as well, making sure that you're not invoking the same kind of tools before. This is why in the demo before, as we kind of went through, I kind of disabled these other tools that had similar purpose there, because I didn't want them to be executed again, and causing some problems there.
Perfect. And the next question is, can I share the prompts to colleagues or collaboration?
Yes, the prompts will exist in Dataverse as kind of Dataverse components over here. So if I go over here and into the solution over here, provided that you have access to the Maker portal down here, I can go into, for example, add existing. Should be AI model. I think it's under now. So we should be able to see down here all the custom prompts that we've created. So there's one that maybe I created earlier. It's in the solution. It's now something that I can then sort of work and collaborate on, and other colleagues can also then sort of have a look at as well. So
perfect. The next question is the computer use agent included in the license, or is it there a separate one like for RPA?
At the moment, it's included. It will consume Copilot credits behind the scenes. Just keep that in mind, and it will be consuming, I think, a bit more as part of that. I think it'll be on the 2-factor rather than the 1-factor. So you'll need to make sure you've got enough Copilot credits on the tenant and assigned into the environment as well.
Perfect. Next question is, for this workflow, how many credits would it consume if we were not using a Copilot license but pay as you go?
So under pay as you go, whenever you're using the more deterministic automations, it's always going to, so for example, sending a message in a topic to a user, it will consume 1 credit. Anytime you start to leverage Gen AI, I believe at the moment it's 2 credits that's kind of consumed as well. So just you'll be able to sort of keep an eye on that in the Azure portal, set up billing alerts as well if you needed to.
Perfect. The next question is, when will computer use be available in EU data region?
That's a good question. I suspect that maybe the computer use functionality might be reliant on those Anthropic models behind the scenes, which at the moment, because of the EU data boundary concerns there, it's not yet possible. It may not be possible yet to sort of deploy that out and have that be sort of compliant there. I imagine I believe Microsoft are working quite sort of actively to ensure that this is available across all regions. So probably a watch this space kind of answer there.
Perfect. Looks like that's all the questions. So on behalf of the ESPC community, we'd like to send a big thank you to you again, Joseph, for taking time out the Carter seminar. We appreciate it.
No problem. So thank you so much. Please do connect with me if you haven't already, using the QR code there. And as Sean mentioned at the start, do check out the rest of the sessions happening this week. There's lots of really good content, so I'm sure you'll have an absolute blast. But thank you for attending. Wish you an awesome day ahead. Take care and good luck with Copilot Studio.
Amazing. So that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/research center. Thanks again for all of you joining us today. I hope you join us again soon. Take care.
Good day.